Preservation Committee. My name is Patrick Zollner. I'm the Executive Director of the Kansas Historical Society and serve as Chair of the committee. And it's always, since I'm in the middle, we'll go to my right now for introductions.
Frank Burnham. I'm the Deputy Secretary of Operations for the Kansas Department of Administration.
Good afternoon. Valdinia Nguyen from Kansas City, Kansas, Representative 34th District.
Corey Sheedy, Chief of Staff for the Senate Democratic Leader, Dinah Sykes.
Joe Brentano, former Director of the Capitol Visitors Center and Tour Planner and Tour Director with Sunrise Tours out of Mission, Kansas.
Curtis Young, I am the Director of the Kansas Arts Commission.
I'm Carrie Rayfeld. I am the Chief of Staff for the House Speaker, Dan Hawkins.
And welcome aboard, Carrie. Okay. Let's go ahead and get started with our project updates, and I will turn to Frank Burnham for a regular update.
Thank you, Patrick. Just a few things. We don't have any major projects ongoing, which is great because there's a couple major projects happening to the west of us right now, so one thing at a time. A couple things on the exterior. We did complete the upgrades of the exterior lighting for both the rotunda, the dome, and also the porticos, so that has been upgraded. We're in the process now of installing security provisions around the outside of the State House, so that will start with fixed bollards that will be along the upper ring outside the sidewalk that will provide some additional protection around the facility. And then there will be bollards also going in at the east and west gate drive entrances to replace the flip gates that are there now. Those will be motorized bollards too as part of the security upgrades to secure the building. And then finally, we are looking at adding additional traffic rated type planters that will be out in front of the visitor center where you pull up to the horseshoe to kind of establish where the drive stops and the walk up to the visitors' doors begin. So it also will add some nice green space out there as well. So those are projects that are in progress now. We're also replacing the handrails that go from the first ground level down to the visitor center. They were in pretty poor shape. One of them's already been replaced. The other one will be done here within the next 60 to 90 days. And then I'm pleased to report that we were finally successful in finishing the Ad Astra Plaza. So we were able to set the sculpture, a real nice event we had this fall, had great attendance. The governor spoke at that event and representatives and just everybody that was a part of that process. And again, I'd like to recognize former Randall Hardy, Senator Randall Hardy, who was really a big influence in getting that done. It was a multi-year effort, so it's a great addition to our complex. As far as the interior goes, we were recently installed the plaques that were mentioned at the last meeting around the sculptural elements that are in the rotunda, identifying who the artist was for those pieces. We're continuing to wrap up our security upgrades of our cameras, our card access controls, and everything security related with the State House. And then I can report that there's been at least 3 payments made on the suffrage mural artist work that's ongoing, and I think maybe Patrick might have more information on that coming up. And then as far as future, just the conditions of the State House, again, the renovation was many, many years ago. Things that we're looking to in the future here are things like carpet replacement, continuing to address those. We've addressed the legislative research areas and the revisor statutes, but we need to move up into some of the office areas, the governor's office, and so that's going to be quite an undertaking, but it's something that we're starting to plan for now. We will also continue to clean the exterior of the building. We did a lot on the stairs and kind of the entrances last year, cleaning the black discoloration off the limestone. There's a lot more to be done there. We'll probably start on the first and second floor ledges to kind of keep the State House looking clean. And then we're also working in collaboration with the Kansas Highway Patrol to look at our security guard station and our visitor screening process and what we can do to better serve our visitors and our members as they come and go through the screening process, and what we can do to improve upon the office area of the Highway Patrol there. And that's in collaboration with some changes that'll be coming with docking and central monitoring and so forth. So overall, again, nothing major. I like that, and we will take it. So if there's any questions, please let me know.
Questions for Frank? All right, well, thank you. Our next item on the agenda, I guess is me. As you recall, last year we heard testimony from Shane McCoy and Donna Casement about a memorial for the fallen workers on the Capitol construction. And then in our discussion, we decided, maybe it's not the right word, but anyway, that I was tasked with seeing if there would be a good way to incorporate that into our existing exhibits that the Kansas Historical Society already administers on the ground floor. We have all the historic photos on the Capitol construction and some of the tools on display. So I talked to some of our exhibit designers, and you have in your packet, there were actually more than these are the two that I winnowed down from them, on something that we could do now, and is actually what I am recommending this committee go forward with, and that is simply on the top page is adding a panel that follows the same format as our other interpretive panels on that floor, and basically does the gist of the information on who the fallen workers were, what happened, and list them by name. This actual photo, I think we would probably have to scoot the case over, rehang the photo, but as you can see, we already have the photograph of the workers in front, and it seems to be a good place to do that. The second photo is just a mock-up of what, like a lot of us think of a memorial as a bronze plaque, of what a bronze plaque would look like. There's a cost to that. Even this diminutive plaque here would be between $1,000 and $2,000, depending on how many words we try to put on that. I think in this instance that we should proceed with the Historical Society. We can, of course, absorb the cost of putting this exhibit panel up. And that way we do honor and mention the fallen workers in the now. I do think there could be possibility for a kind of a larger, grander version of a bronze plaque if the committee thought that was warranted. One, if you're walking, and I probably should have got time to get a diagram, but basically in the hall there are two stub walls that are blank. There's nothing hanging on them. And it would follow, you're learning about the Capitol, and there would be the memorial. There would be a cost of getting a plaque larger than this, which I think you would want for that wall. I mean, we're looking at probably between $4,000 and $5,000. We certainly don't have that in our budget. And right now with some of our other, closing up our museum gallery renovation, some of the other work we're doing, I don't feel the Historical Society could spearhead that fundraising effort at this time for a memorial plaque. If there's others on this committee that says this is what I would love to do, I would like to hear, and we could start a committee. On the other hand, we could put it on the back burner for a later time when maybe even we could spearhead that effort, because I do think there's room for both. And that is the gist of my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions, get your input, thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Just for clarification, are the first sheet is currently what is there? Or,
Actually, no, it is current without the panel to the right. Okay. That's the added. I should have denoted that, sorry.
okay,
So that would be what's new. Right now, we just have the photograph of the workers and the artifacts, the tools.
and the second page is an example, a suggestion,
It's the same thing, but with a bronze plaque listing
their
fallen
names.
workers' names.
Okay. And this is just the craziest question I have. Those individuals that are listed are in the picture?
No.
Oh,
And we could add further interpretation to clarify that. That's a photo of, and there actually, I believe, is a label on it.
just some
But
workers.
those were the workers taken at a spot of time, the construction
I understand.
was a 30-year period, so.
Thank
But this has seemed to me the likely place. And welcome Senator Blasey. Sorry, we are talking about the Fallen Workers Memorial and some suggestions we had for the sooner or the later. Any other questions? I know Joe probably has walked those halls so many times. What are your thoughts on this?
I like the placement because it fits in logistically in the narrative where you would be talking about the construction in that era there. So the placement, I think, is ideal for touring groups and for self-guided. Everyone's going to be walking through that hall anyway, so what will be seen by
Has the most
everyone.
traffic.
Right.
I will say that some of the options I did not provide, we do have extra space in some of the ante-rooms, the rooms off to the side. We have talked as a staff about different temporary type exhibits we could do there. I thought in this instance, this was so important, I would not want that to be off the beaten path. And your point about this is where most of the traffic comes through.
Just observation, I mean, I would agree with the location being appropriate. I know there's a cost associated with the plaque, but I feel like if you're going to go to that next level of doing more of a memorial or an honor, it ought to have that prestige if we're going to mention their names, instead of just kind of mentioning it in with the construction piece of it. Otherwise, it feels like it ought to be part of the paragraph or the narrative at the bottom, maybe recognizing those individuals that effort.
So to do a plaque involves a wait in fundraising. We can put this up now and it could always be replaced easily enough with a plaque later if the funds are raised. Or again, like we said, it could be both. This allows us to do more text, more information. I know they submitted a packet full of lots of information, at least some on each worker. And then, like we said, an option B is then a later plaque could be installed. And I wish I would have taken the picture and edited, but if you can visualize it, it's the little stub wall with nothing on it right when you go through the hall. So we have multiple options. I would also like to know if anyone would like to spearhead the subcommittee if we do want to proceed with the bronze plaque, because I think we will need that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support the first choice to not have a delay and to not have to wait for the fundraising and the cost so that we get something out there and up on the walls. And we could have, the goal of having the fundraising for the plaques if the committee wants to do the plaque. But I would make a motion to approve the first page of having the existing display methods that we've used currently and going with that, at least as the first step.
Thank you. Any more discussion on Mr. Smith's motion? We have a second. Senator Blasey. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Well, thank you so much. We will take this back and we will get started on this. And at a future meeting, we can revisit, because I agree with Frank. The goal should be toward a bronze plaque, but we can't make that happen this soon. Okay, well, the next item is just an update on our suffragist mural installation. Frank and I were talking. We're primed for Kansas Day. Every year we have a program, the Historical Society on Kansas Day, and in past years it has been the Happy Birthday Kansas photo contest. Last year it was a more historical interpretation of our history. And this year it'll be devoted to the suffragist mural. And our tentative program involves, the governor will be speaking. We have representatives from the League of Kansas Women Voters who sponsored the mural and is paying for it. There will be, so we have, the artist will speak. We will have a singer singing a suffragist song to the tune of the Battle Hymn of the Republic, and then, of course, our old standard Home on the Range. Then we will convene. This is the part that we're trying to figure out, because we will have a lot of people to get to the funnel to where the actual unveiling of the mural. And then we'll go take photos and eat cake. That's my favorite part at the end, the cake. So that is the, on actual Kansas Day, January 29th, from noon to 1. And we anticipate the program, as in the past, from being roughly from noon to 12:30, with the extra time for cake. So any questions about that? Well, I hope to see you all here as the Capital Preservation Committee. This was over several years from before my time that we've been talking about this mural.
Yeah, real quick, remind me, where do we fall on having the frame part of that? I know that was part of the options presented by the artist at the time, and we discussed that, but I don't think I don't remember where we landed on that.
That's a great question, and we were just talking about that. And I will find out and have Heather distribute that information. I think that was the last I recall, was that they opted for the frame at an additional cost, but I will have to confirm. But that's a great question. The frame will actually make the unveiling either. I was just asking Frank, how are you going to do that? He's like, I don't know, Patrick, how are you going to do that? So, yes, but we're all excited. The concepts, and thanks to all of your comments, I think it's come together and it'll be a great mural. Any other questions?
So to comment on the unveiling, Patrick and I were discussing that. I don't currently have the means other than our standard pipe and drape, and so I think it should be the responsibility of the artist or someone to donate those services. I think it was important that it did not include the state or Department of Administration contributing funds for this project. So I would hope that their fundraising or their connections with other arts peoples could provide the means, and then we could assist them in setting that up. But I would like to refrain from purchasing things specific for that.
Understood. I will be happy to relay that to the group, the committee. Okay. I think with that, we have gotten our updates underway, and we're to new business, the Father Capon Memorial.
Thank you, Patrick. And I think Mr. Mike Kelly is here with us today. I think he's going to be able to share some testimony. He did a great job in committee, really explaining the story and the powerful testament to Father Emil Capon. And I think his story resonates with so many Kansans. So I'll let him kind of introduce himself and give a little brief remarks on the reason why this is so important to so many people, and then kind of explain where we're at in the process and take any questions. So I'll defer to him, sir.
Thank you.
Chairman Zollner and members of the committee, thank you for taking my testimony today. I think the information on Chaplain Capon is in the lavender-colored packet, and I thank Ms. O'Hara from Legislative Research for putting it on nice color there. My wife is a Kansas State graduate, so she would appreciate that. I'm Mike Kelly, and I'm vice chairman of the committee. Senator Blasey is our chair, and I represent the military interests in this effort. Also on the committee are Scott Carter, the Catholic Diocese of Wichita, and I believe Scott is on WebEx with us. And Ray Capon is a member of the family, is on the committee, and he is traveling today, and he was supposed to be on WebEx, but I think he's on an airplane, so he's beyond the reach of the internet right now. But we do consult with the family as we go through all of this. We're here because Senate Bill 431 was signed into law by Governor Kelly on March 22nd of this year, and the bill passed unanimously in both bodies, which is unsurprising. Chaplain Capon was a moral giant. His story must never be lost to this state. I want to talk about his historical significance, because I understand that's one of the duties of this committee, is to make sure that only historically significant people are memorialized here. Since the Civil War, there have been about 40 million Americans serve in the military, 40 million. And the Medal of Honor, which of course goes back to the Declaration of Independence, where we pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Our highest military decoration is the Medal of Honor. 3,519 have been awarded. If you divided those 40 million troops into groups of 100,000, 9 of them would hold the Medal of Honor. Let me put it another way. Major League Baseball has been going since 1876. There have been almost 21,000 Major League Baseball players. If you put that same ratio of 3,519 to 40 million, if you put that against the 21,000 that played Major League Baseball, 2. So you could get Babe Ruth and Ty Cobb, you could get Sandy Koufax and Cy Young, but not both. It's exceedingly rare to get awarded the Medal of Honor. Exceedingly rare. And of course, when we think of the military, we think of people that shoot guns and serve on ships, fly on airplanes. Under the laws of war, those are combatants. Chaplains are non-combatants. They don't shoot guns. They're not allowed to shoot guns. Same for medical personnel. It's even more difficult for medical personnel and chaplains to get a Medal of Honor than a combatant. In the history of the United States, 9 chaplains have earned the Medal of Honor. 9. And one of those is Chaplain Capon. Not only did he win the Medal of Honor, he's the most decorated military chaplain in military history. So of all the people that have served as a chaplain in our military, he has the most military honors. He has the Medal of Honor, he has the Legion of Merit, and he has the Bronze Star with a V for Valor device. So let me talk about each one of those. The Bronze Star, in August of 1950, there was a wounded soldier. There were no other soldiers that could go out and get him back to safety into an aid station. Chaplain Capon and another soldier volunteered to go out and retrieve him and carry him back to safety. And that was under machine gun fire. And it wasn't machine gun fire 3 valleys over, it was machine gun fire right there. So he went out and risked his life to save the life of another soldier. His commanding general ordered that he be awarded the Bronze Star with a V device for that. Very seldom do non-combatants get a Bronze Star with V device. Very seldom. The Legion of Merit, very high award for meritorious service. This was given for Chaplain Capon's service while he was a prisoner of war. And he kept the morale of his fellow prisoners high. And the citation, which is in your lavender packet there, notes that the death rate in his camp was about half the death rate of a similar North Korean prisoner camp in the same time. So his ministrations to his flock saved dozens of soldiers and let them come back to their families when the war was over. Finally, let's talk about his Medal of Honor. His unit is part of the 8th Cavalry, it was the 3rd Battalion. They were in North Korea, what we now call North Korea. And the Communist Chinese decided to enter the war, and they threw a huge amount of manpower into the battle. They surrounded the 3rd Battalion. Battalion commander ordered the wounded and the non-combatants to retreat. Some of the wounded could not be moved. Chaplain Capon said, "I'm going to stay with these men." When he did that, he knew he was going to become a prisoner. He knew that. He engaged the Chinese leadership to prevent the wounded from being executed on the spot. And when they were captured, they marched 87 miles to a prison camp. 87 miles. It's 88 miles from the University of Kansas to Kansas State University campus. They mentioned had basketball game nights and stuff like that. Can you imagine walking in the middle of winter, carrying your wounded colleagues from Lawrence to Manhattan? That's what they did. Trying to keep my voice from breaking. It's so astounding what they did. Chaplain Capon became ill. He became so ill he could no longer serve. And the guards, communist guards, took him away to what they called the camp hospital, which was really the camp death house. And on his way, his act of faith was to tell his fellow prisoners to forgive the guards for all their torment, to forgive them. That's one of the finest examples of Christian faith I've ever heard of. And he died 2 days later. At the end of the Korean War, some remains were repatriated and buried at the Punch Bowl Cemetery in Honolulu, Hawaii. Many of them were unidentified. Forensic science has improved quite a bit since the 1950s, and the Department of Defense started exhuming some of those remains at Punch Bowl Cemetery. And among those remains, Chaplain Capon's remains were identified. And his remains are now in Wichita. He was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, which is the #2 award in the military hierarchy. And many of his fellow POWs campaigned for the Army to review that and to put him in for the Medal of Honor. That campaign eventually was successful after many years. So he was awarded the Medal of Honor posthumously in 2013 by President Obama. I'll just tell you a tiny bit about my military story. I had to undergo prisoner of war training when I was a teenager. I was 19 years old. And I spent 3 days in Colorado in the summertime in a simulated prisoner of war activity. It's not fun. The main thing they try and do is they try and break you mentally. They try and break your faith in your country, in what you believe in, whatever that is. They never broke Chaplain Capon, never. That example must be kept to inspire Kansans for now and forever. I'm happy to answer any questions you have, Chairman Zollner.
Thank you. That's very well thought out and very moving. What stage are we on, since this showed up in our packet too, and talking about the proposed memorial?
We have had a subcommittee of our committee work on what we call the artwork. And we sought some sources. And the one that appealed to our committee the best is Lundin Sculptures. They're from Fort Collins, Colorado. And among the Lundin Sculptures, they have 2 pieces that are in the U.S. Capitol statuary, including Amelia Earhart. So they have one of the 2 Kansas notables in the Hall of Statuary in the U.S. Capitol. Our art committee just felt like the examples of their work just spoke as the best of the ones that we saw. So we're envisioning a sculpture, life-size or maybe slightly larger than life-size. I guess that's called heroic in the genre, and on a pedestal. I've suggested, and I think the committee has agreed, that 3 sides of the pedestal, one ought to reflect military, one ought to reflect religions, and one needs to reflect Chaplain Capon's Kansas roots. And so we're we're going to suggest that to the artist as, themes for the base. We anticipate him being in military uniform, standing. We will make sure that his military uniform is historically accurate. The Army has a chaplain's museum at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. We've been, I believe Scott Carter has been in contact with the curator of that museum. I also contacted some people at Fort Leavenworth, and they referred me as well to the chaplain, the Army chaplain schools at Fort Jackson and their Army chaplain museum there. And of course, Chaplain Capon's story is captured there, as you can imagine. So we will make sure his uniform is correct, his insignia are correct for his military service. I don't really have anything other than that very rough sketch to offer you at this time. You'll note on the front there's kind of a little dark band. That is a Medal of Honor ribbon. It's a blue, the ones that are actually awarded, they're sky blue with some stars on it. So that would just, obviously, I don't know if it'll be that color, if the color be there, but it'll be the geometric design of the Medal of Honor ribbon is what that dark spot on the base in the drawing is. And I'll do the best I can. I have not spoken with Mr. Lundeen myself, so I can't give you any, primary reference testimony on that, but I think his work speaks for itself.
Any questions by the committee about the proposal? Mr. Seedy.
Is this intended for be outside on the grounds or inside the Capitol? That I'm not clear on, sorry.
Question, have we thought about the location?
We have thought about the location, and of course, the location is subject to the approval of this committee. So anything that we're thinking of is obviously subject to your judgment and direction. We're considering the second floor south wing. And the idea there is there's also a stained glass, military themed stained glass in that area. And that on Inauguration Day, the new governor walks through those doors. So if the last thing a new governor sees before they take the oath is someone who carried their oath to the very end, I'm sorry, my voice is breaking. I think that's an appropriate thing for the governor-elect to see before they take their oath. So we like that spot, but obviously it's the choice of this committee, how that would work.
This time, are there questions about the location? I know that's a big one. Frank, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for your service.
Sure.
With this being a life-size sculpture, I just know from experience in watching the Eisenhower statue with the means, the crane, the method by which it was, the weight of it, has that been evaluated in trying to put this on the inside, and is it feasible?
Well, we know that we don't want to cut a hole in the side of the building. We get that. We will certainly work with the artist, and we'll have to obviously work with the people who have the dimensions of all the entrances to the Capitol building and what all the clearances are. We'll obviously provide that to Mr. Lundeen and say it has to go through this to get in. So I would imagine that there'll be some assembly work in, at its final location, and I'm just going to say in the south. I'm just going to assume for the purpose of this discussion that that's where it's going to be. I realize it's not a final decision. But if it's going to be in that south wing, we need to make sure that it can get through every opening that it needs to get through. We are painfully aware of that. This is privately funded. We don't want to expend private funds to open a hole in the side of the State House and then close it back up again. We don't want to do that.
I would add to that that the funds would include structural analysis, especially if the base is probably the more concerning piece of me, the size of the base and what it's sitting on. Just looking at this rendering, it looks to be fairly sizable. I'd want to have that fully studied and evaluated before we would be able to make that decision.
I would agree, a structural engineering study of the exact proposed location would be required, and we would need to pass that. And if there were any structural work that needed to be done, we would try and avoid a place where we would need to reinforce the structure. We would try and look to put it right over a load carrying beam or something like that if we can get some of the architectural drawings of the south wing to ascertain that. But yeah, you're correct. Weight and volume both are, and linear dimensions are all something we want to keep so that we don't cause other problems to this building.
And finally, if it's, I guess, not realistic or feasible to be inside for whatever reason, have you given consideration to where on the exterior of the building you think it might be appropriate?
I have not engaged in any discussions on that. Perhaps other members of the committee have privately, but I don't have anything to offer right now of somewhere else. We're thinking of the south wing inside right now is that's what we're thinking of. But, and the points you bring up, and we don't want to spend $500,000 rebuilding the floor and cutting a hole in the side of the building. We don't want to do anything like that.
Mr. Kelly, what is your time frame?
We don't have a time frame right now. We knew we had to meet with this committee. The bill was signed in March, and we knew that sometime this fall the committee would meet. I guess we're still in fall, aren't we? I guess winter is another day or two. So that we're at our first milestone is talking to you and getting what's going on. We need to do more fundraising. The Catholic Diocese of Wichita is leading the fundraising effort, but I know they've already received some funds. I know because I donated some. But we need to raise the funds. And then once we have sufficient funds, we need the Department of Administration to work the contract with the Lundins. And we've had discussions with the General Counsel of the department on that. And the finance director of the Catholic Diocese of Wichita has agreed to work with the appropriate people in the Department of Administration to send the funds over, private funds over once there's an invoice. But we don't have a timeline right now. So I can't give you any stronger answer than that.
Any other questions for either about the location or the proposal? Mr. Young.
Have you settled on a medium yet?
We're looking at bronze, and we don't know if we're talking about marble or limestone for the base. And maybe if we're trying to make the base a little bit lighter, we might look for something, you know, like a limestone sheathing with some sort of lightweight, you know, composite structural thing inside. If that would make the whole thing weigh less, then have us avoid doing structural modification of the floor. So we don't have anything locked in on that, but bronze is what we've been talking about.
Senator Bothy.
Thank you, Patrick. I didn't know if today, we wanted to give an update. I mean, this, this picture that was given to every member of the committee, I think is more or less the final, what's going to be the final sculpture. Other than his left hand, he's holding the pipe. This was a pipe that was shot out of his mouth in Korea, which you see in the picture on the left that he's holding, smiling. That pipe will not be in his hand. It's, if it goes anywhere, it might be like in his tucked in his pocket or something. But other than that, this is generally what it's going to look like. And I don't know if, I know with the Women's Suffrage Memorial, you asked for a vote of the committee to kind of just give approval that this is the direction we like to go. So I don't know if that is something you want to do today, or what you exactly want to see us do. I think it's going to take about 12 months to 18 months to complete the sculpture. But I think we'd like to make sure that the committee is certainly comfortable with the direction it's headed. just so the committee can authorize the artist.
Sure, and that makes sense to me. Questions to that point, and I'll look at Joe again. Other than the Felton statuary, what all this would be different, right? Be new.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I know from experience being at the Amelia Hanger Museum, the bronze that they did up there is quite lighter than you might think. It is hollow there, and I know one of the requirements when they installed it in Statuary Hall that the base had to be self-leveling and very lightweight there. So I understand your concerns, but I think there are ways that you can make sure it satisfies their structural requirements for those.
So any other thoughts, though, about the proposed height and location?
In the south wing, would it be somewhere in the middle you're envisioning, or to one side or the other of the doors? Or because I know they use that space for events quite often, and that would be something to consider.
We are going to go where the committee lets us place the statue. That's the first step. Standing here today, I would tell you, I think we'd like it centered and near the door, but, and once again, we're thinking of Inauguration Day and giving inspiration to the governor-elect. That's kind of one of the ideas we thought of. But clearly, if the committee thinks it needs to be to the left or the right of the doors or closer to the rotunda, we don't think it should be in the rotunda because rotunda's got a nice symmetry of the four statues that are already there. So we don't think we should intrude on the rotunda design and installation right now.
Senator?
I think it would certainly, I think the vision is have it close to the door. I mean, it wouldn't be in the, where you usually have speakers or where the general crowd congregates. It would be out of the way, close to that door that's rarely ever used. Yeah.
I would just ask that it, one side or the other, we do the procession out for the inaugural swearing in. We've unfortunately had to do Mr. Dole's service, and they went out that door. So there's a lot of procession that happens with the direct access into the rotunda there. So I think we should probably try to stay out of the center direct path or axes if at all possible.
Okay, I'll just offer one thought. This is from Military Heraldry, that the right side is considered the side of honor and the left side is the sinister side. And so, which we would call the right or the left side of the door. We would say, from the Military Heraldry perspective, we would say it should be on the right side. That's the position of honor.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think if you go up there and look, and maybe Frank, you and I can walk up there, I don't know how much room you would need if you were carrying a casket through there with people on both sides, but I believe the dimensions there's plenty of room. Even if it was placed in the center, I don't think it would be in any way hindering anybody to come through those doors with a casket and people carrying the casket.
So do we have a subcommittee established for this?
We do, and I want to say it's Representative Orjan and maybe Senator Bowers, and maybe one other person. Maybe are one of you two on there? Are you chairing it? I'm chairing it. Yeah, we have not met though.
I think I might be on it as well. I guess my request would be, could we study that further?
Sure.
As a subcommittee and then make a recommendation?
We'll do that during session. Okay. All right.
So that is a motion? Was that what you made?
I'll make a motion that the subcommittee take this up further as far as the actual placement and full consideration of the south second floor is what we've identified.
Any comments or a second? All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Kelly.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
Update
Yes, you're welcome.
to the
This is a historically significant person. It's appropriate to recognize him.
Mr. Chairman, real quick, just a comment. This would be the first time, I believe, that we're allowing a statue of this against inside the building, outside of the four we already have in the second floor rotunda. And so I foresee of other groups coming to us with such requests, since we're kind of opening that door. So I don't know, it might be a good idea for the subcommittee to also think about future requests and standards we might have, or we might want to have those statues or type of statues, or kind of the rules like on size or something based on the feasibility study that I think will come out of this. Just kind of thinking ahead that I think we'll get other requests of this nature because we typically have had these statues outside in the grounds.
Correct.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's probably a good idea. I think Statuary Hall probably has certain dimension requirements, and maybe you can help us find those. So maybe you'd want to mirror that. I don't know. But ultimately, I think I agree with the subcommittee in terms of trying to figure out placement. But do we want to approve the general sketch of this art today, Mr. Chairman?
If you think it's far enough along, it looked far enough along to me, but is there any other comment about the proposal of the depiction, the statue?
What exactly is the hand gesture? Is this what I'm seeing? It's kind of a little bit hard to make out there. The raised hand.
I'm a Baptist, so you'll have to forgive me here, but I believe that is a hand gesture that priests use when they're presenting a blessing. So that it's a pastoral act. It's not a military act.
Do we have a motion to approve the direction of a statue for this memorial?
I'd make the motion.
Senator Blasi's made the motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Sheedy seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you for this update. You're moving right along. Our next agenda, if I get back to my agenda, is Mr. Tuck Duncan to present a proposal for his political button collection. Mr. Duncan.
Numerous organizations. Most people who know me and my lobbying activity know that I represent the Kansas Wine and Spirits Wholesalers and Association and have since 1981. Now, so during this time, I've been collecting buttons. Actually, this button collection of mine goes back to my elementary school days. If you look close enough, you'll see one in there for the Avoca School up outside of Chicago. You have before you a variety of pictures. That picture of FDR is there because my great uncle, who I'm named after, Robert Edwin Duncan, was an admiral in charge of the Bethesda Naval Hospital and Roosevelt's position. And that picture indicates to his good friend, and it's signed. So it has a great deal of meaning in that regard. I have a button that goes back to the 1800s for, it's a stick pin for President Harrison. And then a whole variety of others. You'll see in these pictures, you might notice up close, there's a couple of sunflowers. Those sunflowers were purchased for the delegations that went to the national conventions. And actually, they were bought for the Democrats. The Republicans didn't want one or something, I don't know. But Bottenberg and I chipped in and bought flowers for them at two different conventions, Atlanta and Chicago, I think. And then I still have a couple boxes of buttons to go through. When clients come in and they see the collection, they say, "Oh, I got 4 or 5 buttons," and then I end up with 4 or 5 more buttons. And so the fact is, I've been to every presidential library. And every presidential library, and I have to, if you've been to Reagan, it's pretty amazing up there in the clouds with the airplane getting ready through the glass window to fly over. But JFK's is pretty neat there by the river, and I've been to Nixon's before he died with his version of the Watergate, and I was there after he was buried with the archives version of the Watergate. So, but nonetheless, you know, you go to the Truman, and I will confess, I've not been to Eisenhower remodeled. I was there before, but I haven't been there recently. If not all, most have some type of display relating to the political process. It's the posters, the buttons, the bumper stickers. One of these in here, you'll see a Landon, what I call a Landon bumper sticker. Which page is that on? It's on page 4. In the bottom left side, you'll see a thing that says Landon. That's metal. And what you did is you would screw it onto the back above your license plate. So to me, that's the original bumper sticker, et cetera. So we got that. So, and I have, you know, I've had legislators over these 40 plus years provide me with some of their political memorabilia. I have the license plate that used to be on the docking car in front of the Cedar Crest when he was governor, making people think that he was there or something. And I have some other items. My vision is, on the back page, you'll notice this is the area downstairs that's opposite from where the little cafeteria is. It's the hallway before you go into what I call the lunchroom, which has all the tables and the vending machines. And at the back of that area, which would be the north side, you can see that there's literally carved into it a place that you could put a cabinet of some sort. And that's my thought of where, you know, so it's not in the middle of everything. It's placed literally built into the wall. We would use the same materials that are for the rest of the woodwork that's down there. I've talked to some of the architects who did the Capitol stuff, and I don't know what the prices are yet, because truthfully, I didn't want to do a whole lot of work if you folks are not interested. All right, so, but obviously, we will stand for the cost of it. It could be a couple of different types of cabinets. It could be cabinets with trays that pull out. I've seen that at various museums, or it could be where you have the for some of the posters and stuff, you have where they you can move the little racks. It'd be nice to have some type of shelving in that cabinet as well to place some of the objects like the Eisenhower teacup and the docking plate and things of that nature, which are pictured in there. And I have I've got, well, some of you have been there, I think, or some of the legislators have, during the reception that we hold at the health. My office is in the health building just across the street. And up on the second floor. It's been there 18 years now, and I'm not going to move because I don't want to have to move all this stuff. So how did this get started? During the COVID, I ended up in the hospital for 3 weeks with COVID pneumonia. They wanted to intubate me at one time, and I said, no, you're not going to do that because everybody that gets intubated dies. Well, they did during COVID, trust me. So I survived that and spent another couple of weeks resuscitating. And when that sort of happens to you, and I'm in my mid-70s now, you start thinking about what are you going to do with all this garbage that you've collected for the last 70, 50 years or whatever. My wife and I owned 3,300 square feet over at the what's known as the Commonwealth Building on the first floor. And we recently donated that to the Jayhawk Theater so that they can complete their renovations over there. I was the attorney that wrote the original articles for Jayhawk Theater, historic Jayhawk Theater with Reverend Taylor. And any of you who knew Reverend Taylor would have to think, boy, there is an unusual partnership, because he was Kansas for Life at its best, anti-alcohol, and I was promoting wine and spirit wholesalers matters. But it just shows you can agree to disagree on things and still be and not be disagreeable. So he and I did fine. So my wife and I have been actively involved in the Jayhawk, and now it's getting renovated, and we're glad to see that. So we gave that away. We got a few other collections. I'm trying to figure out what to do with 750 pieces of Peanuts paraphernalia, but we'll find it someplace. And so it dawned on me that at least the political buttons that are in here and some of the political material should find itself a permanent home, and that home is someplace where I've been for a long period of time, and would, as kids see it, understand with some little story associated with it that this is part of the process. You don't get in this building, you don't get on the third floor, you don't become the majority leader of the Kansas Senate if you haven't been around the hustings and knocking on doors and giving people buttons and bumper stickers and other materials. And and when I met with the director, you used a word that I thought was phenomenal, and I'm going to repeat it. You said it was a whimsical idea, and I think it is. And I think we could use a little whimsy in this building sometimes. And so it would be obviously one of the less serious displays in a manner of speaking, but it would be, but I think it has a place. And I think I found a place, and I need some direction from you. What do you want to do? Is this something that appeals to you? I know I talked to Senator Bauer. I know she's given me some positive signs, and I talked to Chase and some others. So, and I've talked to a lot of legislators about it, and who all think, oh, that's not a bad idea, but you are the folks that hold the power. So let me know, and then we would go forward. We'll get the bids on what it would cost to build a cabinet. I'd work with the staff at the Historical Society for an appropriate way to be curated. I'll just be quite honest with you. The first time I tried to donate these to the Historical Society, before your time, sir, was, well, we'll be glad to take it and put it in the drawer with the rest of what we have. That's not really what I envisioned. I mean, this is a collection that's come together over a long period of time, and it seems to me it demonstrates, some effort to be engaged in the process. So I'd be glad to answer any questions you have. I did not bring any spirits or wine because it's illegal.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. And we did have a most enjoyable visit, though I must profess I forgot. I did not recall using that word, but delightful is also.
Well, I'm a lawyer. I wouldn't lie to you.
I do have a clarification. Would this then be a donation to the Kansas Historical Society?
Yeah,
Because that's one of
typically
the.
we work out a contract of some sort, and there's an agreement, et cetera. I mean, if you folks ever decided to get rid of it, we'd probably want to have some understanding about where it would go or whatever. I don't know. I mean, those are all issues to work out. I mean, when I did the Jayhawk Theater deal, we made provisions that if they didn't do certain things within a certain period of time, we got our space back. Trust me, they're moving forward. I'm not going to get the space back. So, I mean, there's some typical understandings and agreements, but yeah, it would be and I don't believe that you want all of these buttons. I understand that. We'll have to go through and figure out which ones are appropriate. I mean, the Bill McCormick one should be in there, obviously. He was mayor of Topeka, and I've got I've got him for all sorts of characters, trust me. So,
We discussed that. We probably have some duplicates, we already have some of this in our, we have not.
You might. I doubt you have a Hillary Rodham Clinton one with her having red hair, but that's probably not what we're going to put over here. And there's one that says, Newt, your proctologist is calling, and some others like that. But, there's some. I have a bumper sticker. I have the original bumper sticker that says Gore Lieberman, and then underneath it is one that says Sore Loserman. So, there's some humor in all of these things too. So, anyway, so I need direction, and then we would go forward and figure out what all the costs are and work out whatever arrangements need to. My understanding is the Historical Society actually has control of this area. So I'm not sure that do I need to lobby and get a bill passed? I don't think so, but I've done that, but.
Like with the Fallen Workers Memorial, right, we can do that. I do want to get some input from the committee before talking, but there are some challenges from the Historical Society's viewpoint. But first, I would like to open it up for discussions. Senator Blasey.
Thank you, Patrick. I think certainly, talked about this to me maybe this last session or 2 sessions ago. I can't remember, but I think it's a wonderful idea, and I certainly like that it kind of teaches our youth that come through the Capitol about how the importance of the campaign side of this, how you get to this building. And so I certainly am a supporter of it, and would like to see something, because looking at all your collection here, and it goes way back. I mean, certainly before I was born, but I certainly know some of these characters, and I think it's a great story to share. And we have a lot of great Kansans like Docking and so on who've walked these halls many decades before many of us got here. So I think it's important to share the political side of the building.
I can tell you some stories about a lot of those people too, but I think they would pay me not to. So,
So you could have regular hours in front of the display.
well, that I live that long, right? So, I'd like to get this done before I expire. I'm in my mid-70s, and so, knock on wood, I'll be here a little while longer if I don't complete the project. My son, who is also a lobbyist around here for the League of Kansas Municipalities and a city councilman, Spencer, knows to take up the banner and finish the project off. So he and I have talked about that.
Other discussions?
And I'm not planning on expiring anytime soon, just for the record.
But you have a good plan for it.
Yeah.
Joe?
Thank you. Mr. Duncan.
What's your name, sir? Have we ever
Joe
met before?
Montano.
I know.
Yes, thank you.
I've harassed you many a day coming through
I
downstairs.
too like the idea there, but I recall you used the word permanent, and I know the collections down there are under the administration of the KSHS, and they might decide to change the displays out down there from time to time. And would that be something you're open to, or you're thinking permanent and not change?
Well, I'm thinking permanent at a minimum, in the sense that it's going to be dedicated to, the political memorabilia aspect. It's not going to be changed out to be, John Brown's whatever or something. I mean, I do believe that the purpose of this is to provide something visual for. I was in the Boy Scouts. I went to I grew up in the Chicago area. We did the Lincoln Trail, walked from walked from Salem to 30 miles to the state capitol in Springfield, Illinois, and went in there and saw the stuff and saw what was there. And that was all part of the educational process. And you learn things. And I just think this is so I would be, I would be hesitant to say, they can just change that out into something that's for Cary Nation or somebody else. It seems to, I don't have her hatchet yet. I'm working on it. But literally, so to that extent, now if they want to update it or people donate additional memorabilia that's appropriate to place in there because, time marches on, I understand, but for us to build a cabinet and it becomes something other than this concept would be not something that I'm pursuing. So, and again, I would do a contract with the State Historical Society and a donation agreement and that sort of thing, and then they'd tell me it's worth $4.32, and I'd use it on my tax return. So.
I also think it's a very interesting idea. I think the location is appropriate if we were going to choose this location. I am probably hesitant to the idea of drawers or things that pull out because of the wear and tear, mechanical, people climbing on them, leaving them open. So I'd probably recommend more of a fixed cabinet display.
Are you familiar with the
Things.
Yeah, they're like poster size or something that move. My concern is people being able to actually see these things up close. So that's why when I went to the Postal Museum, they have the drawers and they have coins and some things like that, and some of the other, at the Archives building in DC. Some of that stuff you just can't really see, and some of these buttons are pretty damn small. I mean, there's some Ike buttons that are like that size. And so for somebody we can work those details out, and I appreciate what you're saying.
The other one would just make sure that this exhibit is accessible to all people. That's whenever we start adding those other elements, it might present some barriers or obstacles since it's a public building. And then my final one, it looks like you have plenty of content here. Would we pare this down to be more centralized to Kansas themed?
Absolutely. That's the thought. I mean, I got a lot of Dole stuff. I mean, I also have some things that are kind of, I have a Spiro Time Company, a Spiro Agnew Dirty Time Company watch. I have a Bob Dole for President watch. I have a Nixon watch where it goes reverse, as I recall. And so I have 4 or 5 political watches in that collection as well that you can see in that stuff. So yeah, there's a number of different things that are there that are just, I think are unusual. I doubt you have a Spiro Agnew Dirty Time Company watch in your collection.
I would say selfishly, I'm going to be looking for types of exhibits to outfit my new docking building, and I think your entire collection is pretty fascinating, and that would be something that would draw people.
Well, let me tell you
the
what I
area.
have offered also to Tom Day. I have a fair amount of Kansas artwork in my office. I have a painting called Near Silver Lake, done by Robert Alt, who started the Menninger art program. I have an Orlando Keither series of 3 paintings. I've offered to loan those or whatever to the Capitol because he said he wanted to put artwork in the various committee rooms, et cetera, and to work out some deal. Yeah, so I've got some, you got some pretty sterile rooms. And those of us who sit in those chairs and our butts get sore, it would be nice to have something to look at as opposed to just the smiley faces of the senator, during those times. So there's, so, and I guess, my concern there is the kids aren't going to get to docking. Docking's going to have the auditorium space or the event space and some things. I want those 7th graders, who might aspire to becoming to doing some public service, to be able to see something that has a story that might, and they come to the Capitol. I see them down there standing to find their county. Where's Cowley County? Where's, and they stand, you know what I'm talking about. And I take, and sometimes when there's people down there and there's nobody, I'll take people over to where there's the Copper Dome so that they definitely see that. Because it's kind of out of the way. And if you aren't looking for it, you don't see it. But it's one of the most interesting relics down there is that dome piece. So, and then it's got the little door too. So, and, until you remodeled, I knew where every restroom was in this place. And I'm still working on making sure I know where they all are again. But no, but so it's not that I'm, if that's what you eventually decide, I would give that serious consideration. But my spirit of this is to try to get to those, junior high kids, middle school kids. Shows you my age. Those middle school kids in there, and give them some inspiration, perhaps. My picture too could be on a plate at some day, whatever. So I need to know where do I go from here, Mr. Chairman? What do I do next? Or
Do we have any other comments, Senator Blasey?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any comments, but I do have a motion, at least to start the conversation, I think, to see if there's a direction the committee wants to go. If I heard you correctly, you said that this is technically Historical Society space. So I think it'd be appropriate to at least construct and put a display on the south wall outside the vending area. That's depicted here on the last page on this testimony. I think it'd like to be Kansas themed based, no drawers. And I guess for conversation's sake, do we want to leave it up to the Historical Society to determine, to work with Mr. Duncan to figure out exactly what goes in there? But I think it'd be nice to have Kansas-based political artwork or pieces in there. So I think that'd be my motion, and at least start that as a conversation.
Well, thank you, Senator Blasey. I'll go ahead and, so you have a motion, but my comments, and I expressed many of these already to Mr. Duncan during our visit. The location is good in that this is different from the story we're telling in that main hall. We're talking about the straight up history, and off of where the kids and people congregate and eat lunches and all. This is, I think, I agree with everyone. If we're going to put this in there, it's a good location. Staff is hesitant to work with anything that is not ours, with restrictions, with being unable to change out exhibits. So if we could work with that and come to some agreements on how, with that flexibility, I agree to pursue this.
I'm not unreasonable. Well, wait a minute. You better ask my wife of 50 years. She might disagree with it. No, I'm not. I'm sure we'll work something out. Because I'm sure my children really don't want all these buttons. And I only have one granddaughter, but I do have a great-grandson now, so maybe I can give them to him. He lives in Wichita. So.
We'll probably have some extras, but
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
So to that end, if your motion covers that we need to negotiate to where it works with our,
Yeah, I think my motion, I think I left it vague enough, hopefully that you could, your staff have flexibility to decide exactly what should go in there, as long as it's Kansas historical based on political campaigns.
any other comments?
I'll just second it whenever appropriate.
Representative Nguyen, seconds.
And I'm glad to come back to the committee after we've discussed everything and we can do follow-up reports and keep you informed.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Who was that?
I think
Is that Elaine?
Bowers spoke from above.
Well, hi, Senator Bowers.
This is Elaine. I'm watching. For all of you who don't know, I have a total new knee replacement 2 weeks ago, and it's kind of hard to drive.
Well,
Nice,
thank you
nice job.
thank you for your support.
Nice job, Tech.
I didn't know she was there. I thought it was God coming to get me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Duckett. So we will proceed and direct staff to work. Wow. Pretty good on schedule here. Old business, do we have anything to report on the first Kansas mural?
Well, I hate to follow Tuck Duncan, but I will. First, thank you. And like the senator, we have not met, but it's time to move. I need to know also who's on our subcommittee. I think the senator is. I don't know that third. Oh, the person, the important person. All right. And I've spoken with Heather, and I will need constant guidance on COMA requirements, because I would like to see us, well, first, we have a model with the Brown mural, with the structure for the request for qualifications, the request for proposal, but we need to nail down a timeline that won't take 10 years. I'm like Tuck, I don't have 10 years I want to devote to this. But nevertheless, I've already made arrangements to meet with Heather. I don't know what the COMA restrictions are to first, I want to meet with Heather, go through the files that we had with the mural, the Brown mural. Surely we can pull the models of the RFQ, the RFP. So if the other members join me, is that a violation?
I think you could just call a subcommittee meeting. I don't know about the work or the subcommittee meeting itself.
Before you answer, I'm anticipating if we can look at the files, if we can look at the examples, if we can even actually look at a location, when we come back to the full committee, we have a draft of both documents, a timeline, and a proposed location. That's my thought. And we could do that maybe the first couple weeks of January, before the session gets started, before the staff gets real heavy. So that's your question. Please answer. Is that a violation of COMA?
You certainly could share materials with the subcommittee and review that, and then you would give the subcommittee an opportunity to review those materials. You would call a subcommittee meeting, you would give notice and provide access, and then encourage the subcommittee members to come to the meeting, and then at the meeting have the discussion that would head towards recommendation. And we can assist you with notice and providing a meeting place and making sure there was the appropriate access. Once the documents are shared, they're public record, so you just would need to be aware of that. So if any of the documents were shared with the members, they're public records at that point.
Well, would not they already be public record since they were shared with a former committee 15 years ago?
That's very likely, yes.
Okay. So that is what I'm envisioning. I have a meeting established with Heather on December 30th at 1 p.m. Now, to invite the other two members, refresh my memory again, would that be a notice? If you're available.
We can provide notice. We can help you with notice.
Okay, so my question is, do we have to provide notice?
Yes, if the subcommittee is going to meet and conduct business, you need to provide notice and access.
Even if it's in legislative research area?
Yes, I mean, we can.
I'm a detail person, so
Yeah.
I
Access.
don't need any problems.
Having a meeting in their meeting conference room is appropriate. The only access question is if hundreds of people were going to show up and there wasn't room for them, then we would move to a larger venue. But I would guess that their conference room would be adequate in terms of room for those that would want to participate to be able to.
Okay, thank you. I think there's a couple questions before I proceed.
Senator Blasey.
Gordon, since the Capital Preservation Committee requires authorization by the LCC to meet, would the subcommittee then require authorization by the LCC to meet? Or if it's during session, it's kind of, I'm just wondering if we have to wait till the first week of session, or I'm just curious if there's a hurdle there.
Well, with regard to the LCC, often the key is, are the members to be reimbursed for their expenses or not? I think this subcommittee could meet without approval of the LCC.
Yes, and I believe we did meet without approval for the suffragist one that I recall 2 years ago. And that, speaking of that, that might also be a good model to talk to the League of Kansas Women Voters. I know they had a certain amount of fundraising completed before they started talking to artists for RFQs or RFPs, and so that's maybe more recent than Brown that might be helpful.
That's on the list. I think he had a question or comment.
Yeah, I think our last meeting, we identified who the members of that subcommittee were going to be, and there was some direction that we would be moving forward. We just have not yet followed through on that. I would also ask you, Heather, in your research, there was some question about, had we clearly identified the location for this piece, or is that reflected in any of the minutes?
My understanding to the last question is that we have not identified the location. I know that Senator Hensley had mentioned afterwards that where the suffragist memorial that years ago, now this was 20 years ago that was intended, but that's moved on. If Senator Bowers is still up in the air somewhere, we walked the halls and looked at, there are at least 3 possible locations for it, but that will be something this committee will need to determine with the proposal from your committee.
Therefore, go. You have another comment? Well, just the items on the list, reviewing those past documents. I discussed also with Heather that the model is the Brown mural, the model we can learn from the women's mural. There is then, again, the legislation is in the folder, and our task is to develop and approve the plans, yet the private dollars, the ease with the Brown mural is that there were already entities who had done the homework, gotten their IRS designation, and then other groups moved forward. I guess another question I have is then, how do we proceed with utilizing those private individuals who, I don't know about you two, but I've been getting calls that, okay, we're ready to help. We're ready to know what's going on. And my response would be, fine, then you're ready to fundraise. Yet, we're not to be involved, but what is the guidance of the relationship with those groups that want to raise the funds? or raise the funds and participate, and/or participate.
I guess I'd look to Gordon for clarification here, but could I engage with the representative outside of the committee? We have a blueprint by which we've done this before with D of A to create these accounts.
Okay, great.
Create those donations and to make sure that's all accounted for. And that would be outside of my capacity.
Okay. And then we have to decide the widest sweep of getting the information out, so that we get a broad group interested. And I mean, there are other murals of the first Kansas color. I think there's one in Belton, Missouri. But there are a number of groups who are interested in participating. Yet again, those muralists, we had a very wide group of muralists who presented their qualifications. However, their proposals didn't quite come up to speed. But we do want to consider the outlets to send both so that we get a very wide response. Timeline, I think, is the most important. So that's my report.
Thank you, Representative Nguyen. Any questions? All right, well, good luck, and we're all looking forward to this.
Right. December 30th, 1 p.m. at Heather's Place. Come with ideas.
Our last item was new, recommendations of the committee report. What do we typically do here? Heather?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So KLRD writes an interim committee report, and those basically talks about the things that you've talked about today and any recommendations you have to the legislature coming up. So if there's any legislation that you'd like the legislature to look at or possibly introduce, if there's just any information you would like them to know, we can do that. Otherwise, it'll kind of be just a diary of the things that you've heard about this year. You did meet earlier in the year, so there'll be 2 meetings that will be discussed. But if you have any specific recommendations, I'm happy to include those.
Any comments from the committee?
I don't know if it needs to go in the report, but 2 things that I know this committee has talked about in the past. Senator Hensley has brought it up a few times. That mural that's in the Lieutenant Governor's conference room, or I guess it's technically the Governor's office conference room, but the Lieutenant Governor uses it. I think there's been consensus that should be out in a more viewable area. I know that Senator Hensley's been pushing for that, so I think that's something that we should look at doing. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's gorgeous, and it's from our artist from Hayes, I believe. It's great. And then I'm glad that Mr. Duncan is on my team on this. But the committee rooms are very dull, and I think I don't know if this will take legislation at this point. I know Mr. Day was talking about looking at this and see what is available already at the Historical Society for decorating the committee rooms, but I mean, I would like to see some movement on that.
This community that would, if it had a permanent home to come to, would migrate here. So you need to be aware that there's a lot of support for that.
There are existing funds in that account as well. I think 28,000. Heather, maybe someone who's been here before my time, but yes. As far as the Historical Society's role, we can offer up reproductions of our items in our collections, but from previous meetings when Mr. Day presented, his vision was more on original new art versus reproductions, so we may, as a committee, somehow request to get moving on that, and I'm not sure that would entail, but it has been a question, at least for the last couple of years that I've been involved with this committee.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think this is my 4th year on the committee, and I think it was my first committee meeting that I recommended we do something like that. Unfortunately, I think someone just got to take the initiative to just find some art to get approval. I think the LCC can probably unilaterally approve it since it's legislative space, but I think, I don't know if there's anybody on this committee that has an art background that would just really be passionate about getting some Kansas art, but I think what ultimately we need is someone to take the initiative, and I don't know if there's anybody on this committee that's interested. Just
Thank you, Senator Blasey. I would recommend a subcommittee chaired by Mr. Young to come up with the proposal and coordinate with Mr. Day on how to bring back a proposal to this committee at our next meeting. Any more discussion on that? Frank?
I think we discussed last time, what does those agreements look like with the individual who is either donating or loaning the piece of art? What are the liabilities to us as the Department of Administration or whoever's hanging this piece of art? I think that needs to be spelled out so that those agreements would be in place.
Any other comment? You can back out, I guess.
No,
since
no,
I'd-
no. I think it's a fantastic idea, and we would love to take that on.
Perfect, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to be a member of this subcommittee? Mr. Sheedy? All right.
Elaine would be.
All right, great. Thank you, Senator. Okay, so 3, is that usually what we do on the subcommittee? Can I have more? All right. Well, we can all provide input. Are there any other discussion for the committee before we adjourn?
And on my first one, what does it take to get that mural out of the governor's conference room to more of a public space? We've talked about several meetings before, and I think there seems to be consensus on doing that, but can we just need to make a recommendation to do that? What's the next steps on that? Do we need to discuss it? I don't know. Right, that's part of it too. The location.
I think that we need more information. If someone could bring that back to us in the form of a proposal. Is there someone that, I don't, that wishes to remain there and then others think, what is really the status?
Since it's in the governor's office space, I think we need to communicate with them first. And I'm happy to talk to Chief of Staff Will Lawrence and start the conversation there.
Will could not be here today, or we could have tasked him with this, right? Okay. And do we need a motion for the subcommittee for the art? Because I think we just drafted it, right? Okay. Any more questions? Any other items, questions, comments? Well, thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a happy holiday season.